Well, David has been in a difficult situation. He has finally just got wore down by Saul chasing him, and he moved over into the land of the Philistines. Huge mistake. And he had lied and deceived and convinced the king of the Philistines that he was impeccably loyal and that he had burned the bridge completely to ever go back to Israel. And as the Philistines and Israel did from time to time, they went to war. And the king is saying, David, you're going to be right next to me as like my own personal, your guys are going to be my final strong bodyguard type of guys in this battle. And the generals were going, nah, we don't trust him the way you do. Matter of fact, we think when he looks across the battle line and is looking at his brethren in the eyes, they will betray us. And how right they were. And David was just sort of holding his breath. Him and his 600 mighty men were just going, we are in an impossible situation here. If we balk, the Philistines are going to kill us. We can't go fight against our own people. What are we going to do? And the emotions of being out day after day. So you got to just realize they've gone through years of being chased by Saul, years of living in caves in the desert and always wondering if today an army is going to show up and try to kill them and their wives and their kids as they were in a very difficult place. And now this is just, the stress of this is just got to be immense. But finally, the king says, David, you got to go. These guys aren't going to fight with you. And David's like, oh man, I mean, I'm sure he was like, how did I get out of this one? And so he's now heading back to Ziklag with his men to his town in the Philistine country where he lives. And as he's heading back, he takes him 3 days, but he gets there, and what happened? The Amalekites, who had been invading that southern part of Israel, came and not just took some stuff, they took everything and left the city of Ziklag in ashes. And David shows up and he sees this, and his 600 mighty men see this, that everything is gone. But here's the grace of God. Nobody was killed. There was no dead bodies. There was nobody laying in some carcass laying around and half burned. There was nobody. It was just materials of the city that had been burned. What great grace there was in that. But when they came and they realized these 600 mighty men, notice what they did. David and these guys, they lifted up their voices and wept until they had no more power to weep. Let me tell you something. That gives us the emotional makeup of what's happening here. We're talking 15 years of just a very difficult, stressful time. And typically when warriors say, hey, they took my wife and my kids, they're just like, testosterone starts flowing and they can't get to the person to kill them quick enough. But in this situation, they just melt. It's hard for me to imagine these 600 men, mighty men, sitting around and not just crying for a couple of minutes or being bummed and, a little tear comes to the eye. These guys just start weeping and weeping and weeping, 600 men. And they just keep on weeping until they just have no strength to cry anymore. Have you ever been to that place? It is an exhausting place, and you really are emotionally at the end of yourself. As one commentator said, such tears are the blood of the soul. They just cried their soul out. And I think they cried 15 years of of stress out. And when they finally were just laying there after days of traveling, and they're just completely laying in the dirt and the smell of the burnt ash that's left and everything gone, they came hoping to see their kids and their babies and be comforted and to lay in their bed. And instead of that, they're just gone. David in particular had, as well as the men, had lost his wives and kids. So it wasn't just a certain group of people, even David himself. But David here in verse 6 now was greatly distressed. The other men are bummed, but the buck doesn't stop with them. When you are the leader, there is a weight upon you that doesn't lay upon anybody else. People can carry a portion of it. Moses was carrying that weight, and he's just like, God, I can't keep doing this year after year. Give me somebody else to carry this weight. And God brings 70 men out, anoints them with the Holy Spirit, and the power of God falls on them, and they carry it for a few days, but then they all turned on him and tried to kill him, and God had to open up the earth and swallow most of those men alive because of their disrespect and rebellion against Moses. The weight came back and remained on him still. And so David is just being crushed now by the weight of failure. So David knows he's failed. He has sinned. He just finally said, I just need relief. I don't care what it takes to get that relief. Let's move to the land of the Philistines. Saul's not chasing me anymore. I got relief. And then David just said, I'm just going to start getting filthy rich. And he just became a pirate and a bandito and just started attacking all of these other countries that lived near Israel and wiping them out and taking everybody and everything with them so no witnesses were left, and did this for 14 months. And now he's there, and the failure, the sin, the flesh. These men had saw David in a self-willed, carnal season of his life. Now, some people might look at this and just say, David, you made your bed, now lie in it. You lived in the flesh, and now you're going to reap the sorrow of the flesh. Yes, the way of the transgressor is hard. And now you're getting your due, David. And David no doubt felt all of those thoughts. He was weakened by the flesh of man, and he was weakened by the power of Satan, and he was weakened by his own desire to get relief from being chased by Saul. Sort of a combination of all these things had caused him to not walk by faith and to sin. And now he's been lying and deceiving to the Philistine king, almost had to go to battle against his own people. And he got out of that one barely. And now he's coming back to Ziklag, and his mind's spinning, and they're exhausted, and they're all sort of bummed at him having got in that situation to begin with. And now they're coming back, and they're getting ready to go collapse into the arm of their kids and their wife and lay down and get a good couple of days nap in their own bed, and there's ash. And what do these guys do as they're weeping and all their strength is gone, and David, just the weight of all of this just comes upon him. And the people, they spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people were grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. Guys, understand this. And I often find that people in their experience of life have not quite made the connection that David says twice in the Psalms, vain is the help of man. I can't say this profoundly enough or distinct enough. Man will not be there to strengthen you when you need it the most. When you really need that friend to pick you up, they won't be there. When you're going through the desert experience and you need your marriage to be stronger than it's ever been, it'll be weaker than it's ever been. When you need that comfort of your kids or of your parents and you want them to fill this void, this need, you're at the lowest you've been and you just, anything, just a drop of cold water would help. You get zero help. And you say, man, it's such a failure. No, guys, it's the way it works on earth. And it's a big part of the design of God. Yes, it's partly because of the sin of Adam and Eve and the sufferings of this life and the inability to connect to the degree we need to be able to connect with one another. Yes, all that's a part of it. But in reality, it will repeat itself. And you see people just start getting upset and bitter and disillusioned and, there is really no friends. Oh, people aren't really helpful. People aren't servants. People don't care. And it's like, just trust me that the degree that you need comfort, man cannot. Even if you were standing next to a perfect human being that had nothing but focus and time and energy to comfort you, it would not be sufficient. It just can't happen. Because of our sinful natures, because of our human bodies, because of the damage of our own soul, because we are in this world. And that's one of the things when we get to heaven, guys, there is going to be such a sweet koinonia. There's going to be a sweet fellowship that we've never experienced before. I think of Moses and Elijah and Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration, all in their new bodies and shining as bright as the noonday sun. Their clothes whiter than any launder on earth could get them. Standing there in the glory, and they fellowship together. And Peter saw it and said, hey, let's build some tents and just stay here forever. Boy, don't we all want to get to that spot? Where is it? Let me go look for it. People trying to find the fountain of youth or El Dorado, the big pile of gold, as if we know what we're longing for. We're longing for that sweet, sweet fellowship with Jesus and with one another. But as you study through the Bible, guys, when Moses was saying, I need the weight off of me, these guys that had been anointed, they all began to listen to Korah and Dathan start lying about Moses and Aaron. And of course, days before that, Aaron and Miriam, the only two people that really were there to help Moses at all, they turned on Moses. And they started saying, hey, you're not the only prophet here. You're not the only leader here. We're equally as powerful. And Miriam got leprosy and Aaron got rebuked. And then right after that, the kids of these guys, Aaron and Moses' nephews, Korah and Dathan, it says they turned and got all the people to come against Moses. When Moses tried to talk to him, they just said, we won't even talk to you. And Moses just said, then we'll just show up at your tent and let God sort it out. And the earth opened up and swallowed these guys. And I think of the Apostle Paul in 2 Timothy. He said, man, when I'm going before Nero, nobody was with me. May God not charge it against those people that should have been there. May God not hold it too much against their account that they weren't there. But the Lord was there with me. The Lord stood with me. Jesus was very much alone. He told them that ahead of time. He said, guys, tonight you're all going to scatter, and not one of you will be supporting me. Some of you guys won't even admit that you know me. And I will be alone. Well, David learned, when I go through the valley of the shadow of death, what? He's with me. David says in Psalms 139, God hedged me up on every side, behind, before, every way. There was no man getting to me, no man comforting me, strengthening me, helping me. I was hedged on every side. I could only look to God. And now that I'm here, I realize if I were to go into heaven, Lord, you're there. If I were to go into hell, Lord, you would be there. There is nowhere that you won't be there for me, being my shepherd. So David came to the point. He came to his best friend for comfort. And he's like, I want to kill you right now, David. He went to one of his commanders going, man, this is really tough. All our wives and kids being gone. And their attitude was, dude, I want to kill you right now. I got this rock. I want to throw this at your face so bad. And David's like, I think I better get by myself here. And what did he do? David strengthened himself in his God. Guys, what does this mean? How does this work? David now for months, we know, in the land of the Philistines has ignored God. Probably before that, he was waning, even when he was in Israel, before he finally made the step to go into the Philistine land. He was not in a good place spiritually. What do you do? Guys, it's this simple. God's on the throne. God didn't go anywhere. He's still there. He's totally looking at you. You are still the apple of his eye. He's still hearing the meditations of your heart. And if you will draw near to God, what will happen? He'll draw near to you. He's just waiting. David is feeling low. I'm such a sinner. I'm so fleshly. I just took this hiatus, and now look. I've been working so hard to get all this spoil and kill all these people and take all their cattle and their sheep and their gold and their fabric. And I finally got this city full of stuff, and we're living this great life in Ziklag, and now I got zero. And the guys that were willing to go into battle with me, they hate my guts. Every one of them want to kill me. Some people just want to lay down and kill themselves. They just want to wander away and go be a hermit. No such options are for us as Christians. And there's moments where God will hedge us on every side, and he'll put us between a rock and a hard place. God loves us too much to leave us as we are. You will either walk by faith, or he will create such a circumstance that you have no choice but to walk by faith. And when you're under that weight of being between the rock and the hard place, you need to know how to strengthen yourself in the Lord. And it's just simple. Look to God. Get your eyes on Jesus. He's there with the giant smile on his face. David is the prodigal son here, isn't he? What did the prodigal son say as he's there in the pig pen? Everything's lost. Everything's gone. He's debating whether to fight the pigs for the slop they're eating. That's how hungry he is. And it says his senses came back to him, and he said, if I go to my father, he will receive me. Now, he didn't understand the heart of the father. He's like, he probably won't ever let me be a son again, but at least he'll let me be the lowliest servant in his empire there. on the ranch. And so he goes back, and he had no idea that every day his heart was broken, just looking and looking and looking in the distance for that shadowy figure that would make up of his son. And one day at a distance, I always picture the sun sort of setting, and he sees sort of the silhouette of the sun. He just starts running. The only time in the entire Bible we see God running. And this story, it's God. Only time God's ever in a hurry in the entire history of man is here, where he's running to grab a hold of his prodigal son. And this is what David's going to learn here. David is going to learn, as he has been learning, but he's learning at a whole nother degree, that when you turn to God, you draw near to God, he is there drawing near to you. And when you're saying, just give me my kids back, I understand, I should be in poverty, I should have lost everything. God's like, no, here's the robe, here's the ring, here's the sandal. You are my son. And David here had to learn this important lesson to just come and get your eyes on the Lord. And who is God? Jeremiah says, I know the thoughts that you think towards me, towards us. Thoughts of good and not evil, to give us a hope and a future. David says in Psalms 139, God's good thoughts of us outnumber the sands on the sea. And so if you're here today and you are at that place where you have lost all, where you feel like you're standing in a burnt city, your heart is just grieving to a point that it can't grieve any further. You've been weakened emotionally to the point where you have nothing left but anger and hatred and bitterness. You're going to either really go down the hill, or you're going to stop this madness and get your eyes back on God. Strengthen yourself in the Lord. And you don't have to wait till everything's lost. You can just strengthen yourself in the Lord every day, right? Isaiah 50, the Bible, or Isaiah 40, the young man gets tired, and even the strongest of the strongest stumble and fall, but those who seek the Lord constantly are strengthened in walking and running and mounting up with wings like eagles and flying. And so just daily putting God's word in your heart that you don't sin against him. Man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. David now is getting back into that pattern, and we're going to see him after this starting to write psalms again. During this 14 months, there's no psalms of David. We know he thought about it because he actually collected some musical instruments from Gath. But there are no psalms, although he sang songs on those instruments he got from Gath later. He did not write any in this time, but after this, very much so. And so David, now after he strengthened himself in the Lord, he said to Abiathar the priest, Ahimelech's son, please bring me the ephod here. And Abiathar brought the ephod to David. And remember, in the pouch was the Urim and the Thummim, yes or no, and the two stones believed to say, God, is this your will, yes or no? And David inquired of the Lord. There you go, right there. He turns to God. He seeks the Lord. Guys, if you don't understand that God is a God of grace and mercy and love, and he's there, he's full of compassion, then you won't turn to him. This is why Hebrews 4 says we need to understand who God is, his nature, that then we will come boldly into that throne of grace to receive mercy and grace to help us in our time of need, because we have a great high priest who sympathizes with us in all our weaknesses. He's not judging us. He's not condemning us. God's not there going, oh, now you're seeking me that everything's burnt down. Now you're seeking me, David, since you lost everything. When you were living in that city and you had all that gold and silver and and had your wives and your kids and everybody's doing great, yeah, you didn't even think about me. But now, all of a sudden, when you are going through hard times, now it's like, God help me, God help me. Yeah, right. Aren't you glad God has no attitude like that? Satan wants you to believe God has an annoying attitude. That's his ace in the hole. Satan wants you to think that God is perturbed at your weakness and sin. He wants you to think that God has an attitude towards you when you come to him after falling. He does not. He does not. He knows our frame. He knows our weakness. He knows we're but dust. As the Father pities his children, so the Lord pities us, and he crowns us with loving kindness and tender mercies. And so David now, he presses in on the Lord because he knows that he's the God of grace. And as he presses in, the Lord says to him, notice, he says, shall I pursue this troop? Shall I overtake them? And he answered, pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail, what? Recover all. What does he say there? David, I'm the God of grace. I love that in John 1, it says of Jesus, of his fullness, we've all received grace upon grace. It's not, well, we're going to put you on a probationary period. Well, we're going to give you some, stale bread and some warm water and some green milk, and, after you've suffered a little while longer, then we'll see about getting your kids back. What does God say? David comes now, and he's got this submitted heart. God, do I go, or do I just say, hey, I'm losing everything. It's too late. You lost everything. You just go back to Israel. And David was willing. His heart was submitted. God, whatever it means for my next step to be in submission to your will, that's what I'm going to do. Everything in David's flesh was wanting to pursue the Amalekites, even if it took his life. He wanted to go down fighting for his wives and his kids. That was what his flesh wanted to do. Go get vengeance. Go try to save his family. But he comes with a full submitted heart going, God, whatever your will is, even if it means turning around and going the opposite direction from where my family is, Lord, I will obey you. God can work with that spirit continuously. It's that simple, guys. You humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. The Bible says that repeatedly. Submit yourself unto God, and he can work with that teachable, moldable, yielded spirit. The wisdom from above is willing to yield. Guys, there's nothing more beautiful in the sight of God than that spirit. He tells us in 1 Peter 3 that the women of God throughout history became beautiful in the eyes of God with that spirit. Not taking charge and trying to control, but with a gentle and the meek and quiet spirit of yieldedness to man on earth, their own husbands. But because they're yielded to God, they're yielded to authority. And the beauty of yielding to authority because you're yielded unto God, that God can work with. I love that story in the Psalms in the Gospels when the centurion, the Roman, comes to Jesus and he says, my servant's sick, would you heal him? And Jesus says, I'll go to your house. He goes, I'm not worthy for you to go to my house. I'm a Gentile. And he said, just speak the word and he'll be healed. And Jesus is like, whoa, I've not seen faith like this in all of Israel. And he says, explain that to me. He said, I am a man under authority. Not of authority. No, people often read that wrong. Slow down. Read it again. I am a man under authority. I say to this one, go, and he goes. To this one, come, and he comes. Jesus, you are a man under authority. Therefore, whatever you say, God will do. Do you see that? Our power doesn't come from our A-type personality and our sword and our spear, and it comes from God. And David killed the giant not because he was the best warrior in Israel. He was but a boy. He killed the lion and the bear not because he was brave. It's because God's Spirit was with him and upon him. And David now is back to that point where he's just fully smitted, and God's Spirit again can work with that heart. And now God says, David, that kind of person I can bless. That kind of person, there's nothing that's going to be lost. Boy, we go through the Bible. It's just repeated. Job, after he went through his thing, it says, and God gave him twice as much as he had at the beginning of the book of Job. Nebuchadnezzar, after 7 years of craziness, his kingdom was of greater glory. In Joel chapter 2:25, when the children of Israel repented and God brought them back into the land, he said, everything that the locust has destroyed, I'm going to give back to you more abundantly than you ever had before. That's our God. David, you're not going to lose anything. Yes, you've been in the flesh. Yes, you've been in a place where you've just been self-willed and doing your own thing. But what happens when we come back? The prodigal son says, Dad, I've done wrong. I should have taken the inheritance. Would you please just make me a servant in your house? Get the sandals, get the robe, get the ring. My son is back. Let's have a great feast. And here's God doing the same thing. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Everything, grace. Of Jesus' fullness, we've all received grace upon grace. The law we got through Moses, but grace and truth we've got through Jesus Christ. David would later have the greatest title of all given to his son, Jesus. Jesus would say, I am a son of David. Interesting. And we're going to see why as we continue this chapter. Well, David inquired, and God said, go. And so David went, he and the 600 men who were with him, and they came to the brook of Bishon, which those who stayed were left behind. So David pursued, he and now 400 men, for 200 stayed behind, who were so weary that they could not cross the brook of Bishon. So these guys have been pushing for day after day after day, and they finally came to this particular spot, and 200 guys were just going, we can't take another step. And of course, it was supernatural that anybody could go on forward. But the 400 men now take off and they start going forward. Just a quick note here, guys. In verse 21, it tells us that David made these 200 men stay. That's going to be an important point. These 200 guys are going, I got to push, but I just don't have anything left. And David, full of compassion, said, stay here. Well, then they found an Egyptian in the field, and they brought him to David, and they gave him bread, and he ate, and they all let him drink water, and they gave him a piece of cake of figs, 2 clusters of raisins. So when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had eaten no bread nor drank water for 3 days. He was on the verge of death in 3 nights. And David said to him, to whom do you belong, and where are you from? And he said, I am a young man from Egypt, the servant of the Amalekites. And my master left me behind because 3 days ago I fell sick. And he made an invasion of the southern area of the Chethites and the territories which belonged to Judah and the southern area of Caleb. And he burned Ziklag with fire. And David said to him, can you take me down to this troop? And he said, swear to me by God that you will neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this troop. So understand, David, he's going as fast as he can. They are beyond exhausted. 200 of the guys, these mighty, mighty men, just collapse. 400 guys are pushing out in the middle of nowhere. Where do we go? I mean, they're looking every which direction through the desert. Do I go left? Do I go right? And then the providential hand of God. I think David here is beginning to see, I'm with you, David. And here's this guy they happen to see, just laying in the desert, half dead, just a carcass-looking guy, and they go over and he's alive. And we notice David comes to him personally. And he doesn't just start asking the guy questions. He comforts him and feeds him and strengthens him and says, what's your story? And he goes, oh, those Amalekites, I got a little sick. He's like, I got plenty of slaves now. We just conquered a whole bunch of places. I got more slaves than I know what to do with. That one's sick. Just kick him to the side. Don't feed him or drink him. Give him anything to drink. He's just a dead dog to me. Just let him die and let's keep going. God's providential hand, and the guy says, I can take you to them. I know exactly the way they're going. Amazing. I mean, imagine again how God's grace is with David. God's hand out in the middle of nowhere with no direction. All of a sudden, God in his mercy and kindness says, I'm not going to only point you in the way you're to go, I'm going to give you a personal guide who will take you right to them. I'm sure these 400 men being so exhausted and David being so exhausted was going, this is so nice. Have you ever been that way where you're, back before GPS? You'd get so tired and someone go, oh yeah, just go up and take a right and then a left and then 2 more blocks, take a right, and then you'll see it on the left over on the other side. And you're like going, what? Yeah, you're just going up there, and it's like 4 times, and you're exhausted, and finally somebody says, hey, you know what? That's my truck over there. Just follow me. I'm not going too far from there. Just stay on my bumper, and I'll take you right to it. Have you ever had that happen? Oh, that's so comforting. Especially if you've traveled for days, and you're exhausted, and you're in a place you don't know of, and you're not sure where to go, and here it is. God I can't explain to you how comforting that must have been to David and these men, that God is with us. God has given us this guy who is going to be our personal guide. And look at this, how God had orchestrated. He got sick and they kicked him to the side, and look at the providential hand of God. And so they agreed to this, and in verse 16, so when he had brought him down, they were spread over all the land, eating, drinking, dancing, because all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. So this group of people is spread out. There's tens of thousands of them, no doubt. And here's 400 exhausted guys. And David attacked them from twilight, it's probably dawn, until evening the next day. We're talking probably at least 24 hours, probably a lot more than 24 hours. And not a man of them escaped, except for 400 men, young men who rode on camels, and they took off. So David, again, these guys are beyond exhausted. They come in and they just start fighting these thousands of guys, and they don't stop. Hour after hour, day goes by, another 8 hours goes by, and finally there's 400 guys take off on camels, and the battle has been completely won. Again, God's grace and giving them this supernatural strength to do this. And David, notice verse 18, what's it say? Recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away. And David rescued his 2 wives, and nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, right down to the final button on his shirt. sons and daughters spoil anything which they had taken from them. What's it say again? Twice now. David recovered all. Do you hear God speaking here? Do you hear the grace of God? Him saying, at the moment you submit back to me, the moment you yield your life back to me, everything that the locust has ate up, I'm going to give back to you, and even more so, because that's who I am. I'm not just the God of grace, but I'm the God of grace upon grace. And notice this in verse 20. David took all the flocks and the herds they had driven before those over the livestock and said, this is David's spoil. So not only did David get everything back, he got the vast spoil of the Amalekites all now comes to David. So David now is this incredibly wealthy guy, and all his men who were ready to kill him earlier are now saying, we're just taking back what's ours. Anything above what was ours, it's yours, David. It's all yours. Showing remorse, showing attrition, and if you would, they're showing David, you are our king. We honor you. Forgive us for dishonoring you. And so David came with 200 men who had been so weary that they could not follow David, whom, notice verse 21, they had also made to stay at the brook Beshon. So they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And when David came near to the people, notice what he did. He greeted them. This word it's emphatic. He loved on them and comforted them and said, how are you guys doing? And he's welcoming them back. He's not treating them like a bunch of weaklings, a bunch of half-hearted guys. David's welcoming them with great compassion and love. And all the wicked and the worthless men, remember that's pretty much who joined David. A bunch of distressed, in debt, discontented guys. Well, a lot of these guys had not changed much. And these men, they went with David and answered, and they said, because they did not go with us and will not give them any of the spoil which they have recovered, except every man's wife and children, and they may lead them away and depart. So they can take their kids, their wives, and then they need to leave us. They need to walk away and dishonor from us. And David said, my brethren, you shall not do so with what the Lord has given us. We didn't win that battle. God helped us win that battle. And he has preserved us and delivered us into the hand of the troop that came against us. For who will heed you in this matter? But as his part is who goes down to the battle, and his part who stays back with the supplies, they shall share alike. And it was from that day forward, he made it a statute and ordinance for Israel to this day. And so David says, no. We need to have compassion on these guys. So I love this, guys. David is this ruthless bandito. He's running this rugged thing. He's lying, deceiving the king of the Philistines. And then all of a sudden, he comes back to a burnt down Ziklag. And he's just crushed under it. But now that he has submitted himself back to God, God's filled him not only with the Spirit to obey and battle, but he's filled him with this incredible spirit of compassion. He sees this Egyptian guy who's just a nothing, nobody. He's the kind of slave that you just let him die, least of all the slaves. And David's talking to him and feeding him and nursing him back to health and comforting this guy. The compassion he's received. I love this. The fruit of the Spirit is love, isn't it? David received mercy. Freely you have received, freely give. God comforted David, and he was just a nothing, poor, runaway guy in the land of the Philistines, sitting in ash, weeping till he had no strength. Who am I? David would later say in the psalm, God has taken me out of the ash heap, and he raised me up to be princes, the prince of his people. David is looking at this guy going, man, I was there just a few hours ago. A few hours ago, I was sitting in ash and thought, man, I've lost everything. And now here I am with direction. And he just comforts this guy. And as he freely is received, he freely gives, God blesses him. And this guy shows him the way. And now he comes back to these guys, and his heart's not full of judgment or criticism or, you guys are second-class citizens because you didn't tough it out and go fight in the battle with us. David's heart is just like, no, you guys did play an important part. All of us were able to give you all of our extra stuff, our bedding and our food and everything we didn't need. All we could do is we just get on our horses or our camels and ride into battle with just our sword and our spear without being weighed down, and you guys watched all our stuff. Yeah, you guys were a part of this. You were the part watching the supplies. And that's as important as actually going out in battle. Yeah. How did that ordinance come in Israel? It was from David's heart just being so humbled by his situation and receiving the compassion and the mercy and the love of God that he now gives it abundantly to others. And it became this great ordinance. And it's an ordinance in the New Testament as well. I think probably the best way to see this in the New Testament, where Paul says, we are apostles, and we would say today missionaries, who are going out to preach the gospel to those who have never heard the gospel, but you who are staying back and strengthening the church and serving the church and blessing the kids and washing one another's feet and financially contributing, and then that supports Paul in his ministry. That supports the missionaries on the other side of the world. He says, everybody, Paul says in Philippians 4, who's giving me aid, he says, you're equal shares. You're going to go to heaven, and God's going to say, well, I got some reward for you. You went and started 40 churches in Hungary. And you're going to say, Lord, I never went to Hungary. Well, were you a part of Calvary Chapel San Diego? Yes. Did you tithe there and give offerings there and part of the Sunday school ministry and teach on fellowship? And yeah? Okay, then. You were a part of that team. You started 40 churches in Hungary. Those who stayed back and strengthened the church, watched the supplies, kept the supplies going, if you would, then you are sharers equally in those spoils. Well, David comes back now to Israel. We're going to discover Saul is dead. And David begins to just take all the spoils and doesn't keep any of them. He begins to give them out to all these people in the southern part of Judah who supported him. Just reading between the lines here, I think a lot of the people that supported David felt betrayed by David. Because here they were getting pressure from Saul and getting pressure from the whole nation of Israel for allowing David to wander through and take some of their meat and live in their fields and not turn David into Saul when they were in the land there for 14 years. They were loyal to David, and then David just ups and goes to the land of Israel, starts living high on the hog in Ziklag, and here they're back going, that stinks. You're supposed to be in Israel, and you're going to be the king one day, and that's why we were supporting you, and now you're off being a Philistine. And David's coming back going, guys, forgive me. Guys, I did wrong you. Guys, you did give me much support for decades. You were helping me, and here's the spoil that I received. And he's rewarding them for their loyalty and their blessing to him. And that's where the story ends today. And